So that's the interesting thing about this, Neil, is that we do have quite a bit of club soccer kids in our program that are in pay-to-play programs. They absolutely love coming to play in my program because they're playing under no pressure. And they say that. They say, we can come here and just be ourselves. We can play. We can try to take those risks and those chances on the pitch that they'd be afraid to do in their club program. And that's a very empowering statement to hear them make.
Okay, welcome listeners to another episode of Play On, Why Street Soccer. My name is John Henderson. I am the co-host with Neil Levin, who's our nation's leading advocate for street soccer. We've got another huge advocate for street soccer as a guest today. His name's Bobby Brackett, Detective Sergeant on the Harwich Police Department. He started his own soccer program there, funded and sponsored by the Police Association. So Bobby's got a lot to say about street soccer, and looking forward to hearing it. So thanks for joining us, Bobby.
It's my pleasure. I'm actually very humbled to be on here on such a podcast, and considering some of your past guests. So I'm humbled by it, and it's always a pleasure for me to talk about my program.
Well, we're excited to have you, Bobby. And let me start out by saying the cops are in the house, man. So we got to talk about your journey. I want to go back, and you guys, you and I have got a little bit of history because we've helped bring one of the street soccer pitches out to the area. But more importantly, just we've gotten to know you, and you're an amazing guy doing amazing work for a lot of kids in the area. But I want to go back again and let's start your journey. First of all, how'd you become a cop?
So it's an interesting concept because I'm going to fall back on something, positive influences. And I found that positive experiences, positive influences are an investment that yield future positive gains. And when I was growing up, I was very lucky to have some positive experiences with law enforcement. I grew up in Lowell, Massachusetts, which is a city about 30 miles north of Boston. I had extremely positive experiences with law enforcement growing up. And through those experiences, and I felt the future to serve the community at some point. Then when I moved down to Cape Cod, where we're currently located, and in high school. And throughout my high school years and everything with my kids and with my friends and everything, out doing kid stuff and maybe getting into some situations that, we maybe shouldn't have been. And we had always had great positive experiences with the police officers. And, I looked to them as role models at the time. And, I felt a need to serve the community and it was either military or law enforcement. And my father was an Army veteran, and he would not let me go in the service. So law enforcement it was. And I couldn't have, it's really who I am. It's not a job at all to me. It's who I am. I would do it for less money. I just do it because it's the right thing to do. And I always had a thing in school. I always found that every time I got in a fight when I was growing up, it was always protecting somebody else. And I've always been somebody that I never liked bullies. I didn't like people that bullied other people, and I always found myself standing up for that. And I just thought for some reason I just like to help and protect those who can't help and protect themselves. So that's pretty much it. And I've been doing it it'll be 30 years in June.
Well, I got to tell you how profound that is to me, because we talk about street soccer as being a metaphor for so much of life, and both a cure and the metaphor for what ails so much of our society. And you just hit on something that is obviously so front and center in our society, and that is all these stories that we're hearing about the police abuse and what bad examples so many policemen are. And I don't want to take away from the ones that are good. And you're, of course, the quintessential illustration of good in law enforcement. And I can't applaud you enough for choosing that path for yourself. And I thank every one of the policemen who were that positive influence for you growing up, that allowed you the opportunity to want to emulate that. And it does, I think, translate into a lot of the message that we're conveying about the beauty of street soccer. But you've embraced that too. So let's start with soccer background and then how you got to do the work you're doing around soccer with the youth in your area.
So, like I said, I grew up in, Lowell, Massachusetts. It was a city. It's a mill city, and I grew up basically playing in the streets. And, I was the youngest kid in the neighborhood. So I got my ass kicked. And, we'd go out in the street and we would play street hockey until we couldn't see anymore. We'd play soccer in the street. We'd drag trash cans on trash day out in the road for goals. And, we just learned to make do with what we could. I mean, some days we played soccer using a basketball and we just made do with what we had. And I think it made us all better players too. I remember, when we'd play soccer in the street and we'd put either, a couple of sweatshirts down in the street to as goalposts and or trash cans and everything, we learned really early on, we're not going to take a shot unless we think so, because somebody's got to chase that ball down. And, so we made sure we were very careful with the ball. And when you think about it later on, you're like, Jesus, we really learned how to play in the streets because of all the environmental factors that we had to deal with. We didn't want to take a wild shot because we'd take out Mrs. Gajeka's window, so we were careful. And I spent hours and hours in my backyard just kicking a ball against the side of the house. I don't know how many asbestos shingles my father had to replace because I just spent hours just kicking a ball against the house. But you know what? That taught me the touch that taught me, of the ball and everything. And I'd use soccer balls, I'd use basketballs, I used whatever there was. And the creativity that we came up with and just creating random games was unbelievable. And we'd have street hockey games against the kids in other neighborhoods, and we'd be dragging our hockey nets down the street and everything, and it really was just pure. And nobody cared who you were, nobody cared how old you were, nobody cared about anything. We just went out there and played, and it was great. And I played for the youth, Lowell Youth Soccer Association. I can't thank them enough. It was a local rec league, and I grew up playing in that league. And I had a phenomenal coach that I played with over those years. His name was Jim Young. I don't know what he's doing now, but that guy had such influence on me. And I look back and I see a lot of what I'm doing right now is because of him. And he doesn't know that. I haven't talked to him since I was probably a young kid, but the impact that he made is immeasurable. And I just learned that over the years as I got older, and I look back and I started getting into, I grew up playing youth soccer. I went into Lowell High School and played, and I had great experience there. We had, Lowell had a phenomenal and a big Brazilian soccer community. And I fell in love with the game and the culture of the Brazilian soccer. And, we had a couple of exchange students from Brazil, and they came up and it was funny. We, at practices or after practice, we did more playing off the pitch, just coming up with creative games because that's what they did in Brazil. And I had a great experience and played in high school. And, and then my family up and moved out of the city. We moved down to Cape Cod, and it was quite a culture shock to me. So, Lowell High School was a high school of 10,000 plus kids. We had, my freshman class, I think we had 2,500 kids in the school, and we had good facilities and everything. And then we came down here where the whole school was 1,400 kids, and it was a much smaller thing. And I didn't know anybody. I walked on to play soccer, and it was just it was a different experience, and I did not have a good experience there. I played a season and it was not a good experience, and I walked away from the game. I regret it a lot, but I walked away from the game because it was a bad experience, and I didn't have any friends there to make it even a better experience. And so I'm making up for that now later in life and everything. And now, when I had kids of my own, I just took on a different perspective of things.
Brought the fun back.
I did. Yeah. I'm having more fun with the game now than I ever did. And I love it. And I have a lot of people in my past to thank for that, some experiences. And one of the things that I brought to my program now, and I started over the years when my kids started growing up, I got back into the game of soccer and decided, what, it's time to give back. I got into coaching in rec soccer and everything. And very early on, I realized that you'd see a lot of other coaching philosophies and styles. And you're like, these are kids, third and fourth grade kids, like they're little kids. Let's just throw the ball out there. Let them learn to touch the ball, and stop yelling at them about trying to form walls and trying to draw the other team off sides. And let's simple the game down. And I remembered that, and I tried to look back on my youth in soccer, and I can't tell you what any scores of the games were. I couldn't tell you what the records of our teams were, but I can tell you good and positive experiences that I had. I can vividly recall playing in the snow. One spring soccer season, early season, we had like 4 inches of snow, and it was the most fun I think I've ever played in a soccer game. Was just playing in that snow. I can't tell you what the score of the game was. I can't tell you how many goals I scored, but I can tell you how much fun that was. And I can tell you, we didn't have great facilities in Lowell. One of the fields we played at was a dirt field. And we used to have to police it for rocks and everything before the game. And sometimes we didn't have netting on the goals. But I look back and remember the experiences we had on that field was incredible. When it would rain and be able to slide tackle in the mud. So all these positive experiences. Not the record, not the scores of the game, but I remember positive people and positive experiences. And I'm like, you know what? That's what we got to do for these kids. And that's where they're going to have fun. They're not going to look back 20 years from now and know what the score was in any game, but they're going to look back and know who the people were that treated them right and some of the experiences that they had and where they played and the culture and the environment that they were in.
Well, Bobby, I can't tell you how profound that is in so many ways, especially with the messages that we are trying to convey here on Play On. And you've been one of our fans and listening. And I remember getting an email from you saying, boy, we're singing each other's song here. And you're hitting on, playing in the streets, positive coaching influences, the culture of soccer versus the sport, letting kids play, all messages that are coming through loud and clear from so many people. And that even the science suggests is the way that we're going to see higher levels of play. And here this episode is being recorded just a couple of weeks after the World Cup, a time when U.S. again got kicked out at an early round on the knockout round, and we just can't compete internationally. And you're hitting on so many of the reasons why. And I coach at the high school level, and we get, to your point, so many players that come back and say, this was one of my favorite times of my youth was playing at the high school level. And they don't come back and say, because that's the year we won the championship. Yes, of course, exactly. That's an added benefit, of course, but it was the experience. It was the fun that they were having. It's unfortunate that so many coaches and so many parents coach and parent that fun right out of the game. And we turned it into this big, giant money business. And boy, again, hats off to you and all the people that helped you form your motivation for doing what you're doing. But let's get more specific on that. Let's talk about, this formation of the Harwich Police Soccer Club and how that came to be and what it looks like.
It's a pretty cool story. So, I was coaching rec soccer. This is probably about a little over 10 years ago. And so our program this year is our 10th anniversary of our program. And so it was a little over 10 years ago, and I was coaching fall rec soccer. The girls that I was coaching a boys team and a girls team. And the girls team I was coaching, they said, we get to the end of the season and they go, we want to keep playing. I said, okay. They go, no, we really want to keep playing. And we want to play all winter. And I go, okay. I go, some of you are playing basketball. They go, yeah, we want to play basketball too, but we still want to keep playing. I'm like, okay. And I go, so what do you want to do? You want to do drills? You want to do, and we go, we don't care. We just want to play with our friends. I said, okay. I go, let's make it work. So they were convinced. So I'm like, okay, where the hell are we going to play in the winter? We're Cape Cod. It's cold out and everything. It's snow. And unfortunately, we only have one gymnasium in our community. We have one indoor gymnasium in our community. Now we have schools in our community that have gymnasiums, but our schools are not town owned. We have a regional school district. So those gyms are up for rent and at a very high rate at the time. It's about $800 a day to rent a gym. So we were left with the community center in Harwich and that one and only gym. So I went, sat down with the director of the community center. And I said, hey, this is what I got. We got a group of kids. We want to play. How do we make it work? And they go, well, we don't have any time slots available. I'm like, okay. All right, how do we make it work? And she goes, well, we don't have any time slots available. I'm like, all right. And she was excellent. She's been a huge supporter of us. So I said, I kind of know that, the community center opens at 8. I know that that the weight room of the community center opens at about 6 a.m. And I know there's a custodian there. I go, I've been driving by this gym ever since it was open. And so she kind of is like, I go, what are the chances I can sneak into this gym and get a slot early in the morning before you start your programs at 8 o'clock? And she goes, well, if you can get the custodians bought in on that, you can do it. So I went to the custodians, and so I was given about a 45-minute window every Saturday morning to sneak into the community center and kick the ball around. And we did. And I started with about 8 to 12 kids. And we went in there and they had a blast. We had some little indoor field hockey goals set up, and we kicked it around. We did some drills for a few minutes, and we kicked the ball around, and it was unbelievable. That 8 to 12 kids grew. We're like, hey, can my younger brother come? Can this and that? Yep. So and so come. Yep. Hey, bring them on. Let's play. So this grew, and we ended up, by the time we had to stop in the spring, we were probably up to like 25 kids. Then the next year they wanted to do it again, so we went in there. And we were probably up to we got to the point where we were up to like 40 kids because I couldn't say no. But we only had 45 minutes, and it was becoming like, oh my God, we can't get anything done. It was chaos, and can't get anything done in 45 minutes. So at the time, we had an old abandoned middle school in our community, because I said we went to a regional school district, so they shuffled it, and that ended up resulting in a middle school that was shut down. It was abandoned. It was abandoned. And I'm like, you know what? There's a gym in that building. So I got myself in there to examine it, and it was an old gym, and it needed it was past its prime, but it would serve its purpose. So I went to various people in town, and I said, hey, can I get into that gym? And they're like, so they kicked it around, and I got good support of it. Next thing you know, I had a key to the building and a code to the alarm. We went in there Saturday mornings to this old abandoned, musty building, and we were the only ones in there. And so we started in there. Now I had a bigger building, and I could expand. And so I started saying, come on, more kids, bring it on. And then one of the things that adjusted my program is that some of the kids wanted to play, and there was a futsal league that was running on the Cape, and it was a pay-to-play program. They had their own teams that they had tryouts for, and then they had this league that was a byproduct of it. And some of the kids wanted to play. So we entered some teams in, and I made sure that we had teams for every kid. So we ended up, I think, entering 4 teams in there, 2 boys teams, 2 girls teams, and we played a couple of seasons with them, and it was great. The kids had a blast, but I found that we were outnumbering a lot of the other teams and groups in there. So we found that we spent a lot of the time playing ourselves. So here I was paying $700 a team to play in this league that we spent 90% of the time playing against ourselves. And I noticed, and I just sat back and I watched the kids' reactions to that, and they had a blast playing against themselves, they're playing against their friends and everything. And I'm like, what are we doing here? Like, we're paying all this money to play against ourselves, and we have this gym. So I said, you know what? We're going to do our own thing. So next thing you know, I just started, putting out the word, and we morphed into our program. And we had this gym for Saturday, all day Saturday. We set up our own league where we split the kids up into teams, very informal, started this league. We played each other. I think we had probably 6 teams, probably 40 kids that first year. Well, now we're up to 250 kids. We have, we're there. We kick off our first game at 8 a.m. and we're there till 4 p.m. for 40, and we don't get a break. We go from 3rd grade right up till grade 12. And we said, you know what, this is what we're going to do. We're going to make it simple. One thing we do is we don't do it by ages. We do it by grades. So we do a grade 3 and a 4, and then we do a middle school, grade 5 to 7, and we do a high school division, grade 8 to 12. Because now all the kids get to play with their friends and their classmates. Whereas, when you have a U8, U12, U10 breakdown, some of the kids in the same grade are split up. And I found the kids didn't like that. All these kids, when I ask them what they want to do, just play with their friends. And they just want to go out there and play. So we're like, we're going to let them play. So we have them split up by grades, which was perfect. We do a co-ed. So the boys and girls play together. It's probably their favorite part of the program. and we just let the kids have their game back. And it's their game. It's called youth sports for a reason. We just let them go out there and play. We're basically a supervised pickup game. We customized some of the rules for futsal to benefit us. And that was done by the kids. We started playing, and some of the rules, you get, the second penalty spot, 5 team fouls. Like, it's just why? Like, let them just play. So we let the kids customize the rules, and we let, the kids would say, hey, can we do this instead? Like, yeah, sure, let's do it. So we have some customized rules. We've modified the game to the way that the kids like it. We have coaches that assist, but they don't coach. All the coaches are there for is to just make sure that the kids get equal playing time. They monitor that the kids sub on and off, and they let these kids get playing time. There's no coaching. We just let them play. I referee every game, okay? I try to keep my whistle in my pocket, and we just let them play and figure out the game. One of the parts that the parents like about the game, is that, we play music while the kids are playing. So they like hearing the music there, so it's fun and everything like that. The parents joke, the parents, I tell the parents every year, I go, the music that I play is not for you. It's so the kids can't hear you.
Perfect.
So we play music to drown out the parents.
Perfect.
And everything. So the kids can just get out there and play.
Short of locking them up.
Yes, they go out there and play. But you know what? The program has just grown so much that it's just become a community staple on Saturdays, is that everybody just comes to the gym. Like, I can't tell you how many kids and parents show up in the morning. They're there all day. They're there all day, and we just want the kids to play. So we have teams, that are set, but they're so loosely based that, they're just for a little bit of organization. So these kids know that if they show up and they're sitting there and a team needs to play, like, come play. Like there's not a team that's going to ever be short a kid, because we have kids that they're just there all day. Sometimes they'll play 2 or 3 games. We just let them play. It's just how we do it. And like I said, it's just, we basically run our futsal program under a street soccer culture, and it's just a culture that we've built there, and the kids absolutely love our program. It's very humbling to me to see how this program has grown, and we have 10 years. And here's the thing, we don't advertise our program out. We don't advertise it out at all. It's word of mouth. And the reason is I have no doubt that I could grow my program another 100 kids, but we just don't have the facility or the time to do it. I have a Saturday to run our program. So there's only so many games you can run. I feel horrible about that, but it's just one of the restrictions that I have. And it's just very, very humbling to me.
Well, beautiful in its simplicity. We just lost the legend Pele, who called it the beautiful game for a reason, and you're describing that reason. The foundation for why he called it that is its simplicity, and how much fun you can have as a culture around this very easy game to play and put together the way you've done it, and you've empowered people to take ownership of it, which is what a community needs. You're completely volunteer, right? You're a 100% volunteer program. Yeah. The mentors that come out that you say that hang out with the kids and oversee playing time, that's volunteer. And none of your kids are probably in pay-to-play clubs elsewhere. They're coming to play with you.
Well, that's the interesting thing about this, Neil, is that we do have quite a bit of club soccer kids in our program that are in pay-to-play programs. They absolutely love coming to play in my program because they're playing under no pressure. And they say that. They say, we can come here and just be ourselves. We can play. We can try to take those risks and those chances on the pitch that they'd be afraid to do in their club program. And that's to me, that's a very empowering statement to hear them make. That's the thing. They're playing with no pressure. It's such a eye-opening thing to hear them say that.
Well, and probably as what happened recently at the Chicago Street Soccer Cup, we had a bunch of teens in an open division. They're playing 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds, and they're some of them were in academy. And they said that this is really the street soccer pitches where they're playing is really where they learn how to play, not through their academy. Correct. And in fact, it's unfortunate because then you get academy coaches who take too much ownership. and control, and they say, no, we don't want you going and playing that because you might learn bad habits. Well, that's where they're learning how to play, but they're learning so much more, and you've described what they're learning. They're learning how to be part of a community. They're learning how to be friends. They're learning how to be, to solve problems, to take ownership of the game and make their rules, and where, you don't have to referee much, and the coaches don't have to coach much, and this is where it's fun. And to your point, that's where we give the game back to the kids. So outstanding. You've been doing this 10 years. You've got, between 200 and 300 players, kids coming out from all ages. First, what are the outcomes? What are you seeing is we get the real-time benefits, but are there long-term benefits that you're recognizing out of this as well?
Well, I can tell you a couple of things because, we've been 10 years and we just recently, probably a couple of years ago, graduated our first group of kids out that graduated out of our program. The interesting thing now is we have a couple of them that are back helping us out on Saturdays. Like they come in, they're helping out with one of the teams, they're refereeing, they're coming back and helping us out. Some of these now we're on a third generation of kids, where the younger siblings that were just born and now they're playing into our program because their older siblings have played in that program. And now some of the kids here, we have, kids that are in first grade and they always say to me in the gym, I can't wait till I'm in third grade to come play. I can't wait. And you just see that, you can't quantify what that's going to do in the future. Like I said, my positive experience with my youth soccer coach isn't paying dividends until now, 30 years later. Now that's paying dividends. And sometimes you can't quantify how that's going to pay off. But I can tell you that I went back in preparation of this podcast. I went back and one of the kids in my program a couple of years ago for his digital media class in school at the local high school, he did a documentary on our program. And in that, he talked about the program. He did video. I hadn't watched it in a couple of years, and it was very touching to look back and watch that. There were a bunch of quotes. He interviewed a bunch of the kids that played in the program, and here are some of the majority of the quotes from the kids where they were asked about why they liked the program so much, and almost every one of them was playing with my friends. It's fast. It's fun. There's no pressure. We've created friendships with players and families. Every kid looks forward to it every Saturday. Another one, brings the town together on Saturdays. Another one, brought me closer to so many people that I never would have played soccer with before. And he goes, and one of the quotes was, whenever a kid walks into that gym, Bobby meets them with a fist bump and makes everybody feel welcomed and included. You look back and you see that and you go, how's that not going to pay dividends in the future to these kids? Well, it's true. I referee these games, but and it's funny that, some of the parents don't, they don't realize it. They don't understand what you're doing behind the scenes of your thought process. So I always stand when I'm refereeing, we have the players on one side of the gymnasium away from the parents. and then I always walk the sideline where the parents are. I make sure, and that's where all the kids, everybody comes in. And I make sure at some point during that whole Saturday that they're there, I interact with every single kid that comes and shows up there. Whether it's while they're playing, I'll come up and give them a little pat in the head or a little fist bump, or as they come in, I'll walk over and fist bump. And many times I'll step up into the stands and sit next to a couple of the parents and have a little short conversation while the game's going on. I'm not paying attention to and that's the whole thing with me. It's like, yeah, I'm refereeing the game, but I'm letting the kids play and let them figure it out. But part of it is just that interaction with the kids and making them all feel welcome and included, no matter who they are. And when we first started the program, there was a group of kids that were from, so there's a high school up the street, Nauset High School, very competitive soccer program, very competitive with our local high school. Some of those kids from Nauset High School wanted to come and play in our program. And some of the kids in our school were like, we don't want that. We don't want to play with them. I'm like, no, you're playing with them. And they go, well, we want to make sure that they have their own, they're all together, that we're not together. And I'm like, nope. I mixed them all up, and they all had to play together. And you know what? Once they started playing together, they didn't care. Now they're all mixed in. They're friends. You see them showing up now like it's a non-factor. They're all friends. They're all playing together. Nobody cares. Nobody cares where you walk through the doors of that gym, and nobody cares where you're from. Nobody cares what demographic you are. Nobody cares where you're from. Everybody's playing the same. Everybody's got the same Howard Police Soccer Club shirt on. Everybody's wearing it the same. Nobody cares. Everybody's included. Everybody's welcome.
you may not have formal metrics, Bobby, and you may not be doing assessments or anything like that, but the quotes from that documentary, which we'll include a link to in our site below here, but the quotes from that documentary and getting kids back into the program who were going through the program and want to be part of it, kids who recognize the value of community, kids who recognize the value of lifelong friendships and lifelong love of a sport. These are all things that are sorely missing from so much of our youth sports today. So while you can't put a number or quantify your outcomes, it is obvious to us that your outcomes are off the charts. And we need a lot more of that. We need you to have another 20 or 30 futsal courts so you can have another 3 or 5 or 1,000 kids in a program like this, because this is, without overstating it, this is so sorely needed in our society and for our youth. And again, I can't applaud you enough for what you're doing. And I want to bring you into what we're doing. And I think that we can learn a lot from what you're doing in this small community where you've created such a tremendous impact and obviously are going to be that positive influence that so many were for you, which brought you here in the first place. So thank you so much for sharing your story. And, we can go on, and you and I will certainly do so offline. But for our listeners, we've kind of reached our time. And but we'll talk more, Bobby. We will continue this dialogue, and people at you make it all happen. And so thank you. Thanks for being a good cop. You're one of the good ones, my friend.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, that's a wrap. Bobby Brackett. Wow is all I can say. We need a mimeograph machine for those that remember what that is, and we need to make about 1,000 Bobby Brackets. Doing incredible work, changing kids' lives forever, and being that positive influence that we so desperately need for our youth, and giving the game back, as we talk about. We'll put links to Bobby's documentary that he referenced and other access to his program out at the Harwich Police Soccer Club down below. Thanks for the likes, thanks for the follows, thanks for the shares and the downloads. Keep the conversation going. This is important stuff. We got to give the game back. And until then, play on.